Evening all. Um, Back in autumn 1993, uh, I was preparing for another autumn visit to Japan to buy koi. But by then, I was really fed up with paying Japanese agents to take me round the areas I already knew. I've been travelling around those areas since '77, and I knew them quite well. Anyway, I made a firm decision that this visit we would do this. I would do it myself, but I did need a friend to drive me around. I mean, I could tell my friend the turns to take and what have you, and this and that. So I asked Dennis Wordsworth, and that was his very first trip to Japan. He was overjoyed. I mean, absolutely overjoyed. So I tried to explain to Dennis on the flight over how we were going to try and do this without any agents at all. We'd do it on our own. We'd ship the koi back on our own. We'd do it all ourselves without having to pay stupid money to Japanese koi agents. More to the point, the Japanese koi agents knew very little about koi. They were just more of, and I did all the deals with the breeders. So really, they were beyond my requirements at the time. Anyway, I tried to explain this to Dennis on the way over, but all Dennis could think about was getting off in Tokyo and getting his feet in Japan. Anyway, the first visit wasn't as easy as I thought, but we learned by our mistakes on that first visit, and since then Dennis came with me every visit, spring, autumn, and whatever. Dennis took to driving around Japan like a duck to the water. He was just in his own little world, absolutely happy. And we'd been going there for a few visits, and Dennis knew the mountains, the roads through the mountains, just like he knew the roads in England. Anyway, there was we used to well, I used to have this book with me, which is a book showing all the koi breeders in different areas of Japan. And there are many areas of Japan where they produce koi, but this is, let's have a look here. Yeah, this is Izumiya in Iwamagi, and it gives a little map as to where he is, although we knew that quite well. However, we used to have a plan between us that we'd not all the breeders are in this book. There are far more breeders than there are in the book. So after a few visits, we started to explore into other parts. And everywhere we saw a glass house or a house covered in polythene, we used to find our way to that place and look inside. 9 times out of 10, it would be an indoor house for growing rice from seed. But the odd time, it turned out to be koi, and so I wrote this down, and we remembered it, you know, in our heads. And sometimes we'd find koi we liked, sometimes we didn't. One of the journeys, or one of the days, found us in a village north of the Yamakoshi area, and it was a village called Tanesuhara. There are 1 or 2 koi breeders there, but not so many. Anyway, I said to Dennis, I said, we've never taken this particular road on the left to see where it goes. So Dennis said, well, let's give it a try. So this was it was a spring visit. It was a spring visit, and so we took this road in our truck, and there were signs in kanji across the road in red. Not knowing what they meant, and it looked quite nice and pleasant at the time, so I said, well, let's carry on, and if it's impassable, we'll turn round. Well, as the road progressed, it became narrower. And instead of stopping and reversing out, because there's no way I could turn round, we could turn round in the road, it wasn't wide enough, we decided to carry on. And as we did that, the road got narrower and climbed upwards. Now, after a minute or so, we saw traces of snow that still hadn't melted from the winter. And so we climbed ever upwards and ever upwards. In the end, the road stopped and turned into a gravel track with snow getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Then we did start to get concerned, because I was in the passenger seat, and on my left there was a drop down this mountain that had to be about 400 feet of sheer drop. Yes, we were getting worried. Far too late to try and turn round on this track. And then we continued climbing ever upwards. In the end, we found ourselves above the tree line, and it was obviously a mountain where this particular part of it, no trees could grow. So Dennis was very careful driving, and we actually got to the summit of the mountain to find an abandoned series of cowsheds, and lots of space to turn round. It was an area at the top of the mountain where in summer a farmer from Tanesuhara used to take his cattle and feed them throughout the summer at this farm. But now it was totally abandoned. There was no one there. So we had to decide, do we turn around and go back from where we came, or do we continue down the mountain? Both tracks were narrow. Once you got onto one of these tracks, you couldn't turn around, you couldn't reverse, it was not possible. So we decided to go down the track, and thankfully after a few miles the track once again turned into a road. The road started to widen, and ahead of us, way in the distance, we saw our first car and human being of the trip. And it turned out to be a koi breeder called Shoji Tanaka, who was a koi breeder in Yomogihira village. And as we approached him in the car, he put his hand to his eyes and he said, "Oh, you shouldn't use that road at this time of the year. You shouldn't use it. Come into my house now." And we did, and he got us a brandy, and that was the most delicious drink I think I've ever had. Thanks for listening.